Let's keep digging. It's Euthyphro's final stand against Socrates. The gods are back. We got to deal with them. I thought we expunged them, but nope, they're back. So we now look at Stephanus number 14C527, which now gives us the modified version of modified version 3. So we're not going around in circles here, though. We are definitely going places, but it is fairly complicated. And if we do come back to certain topics, we're taking them on at a higher level. So not a circle, not just endless run around conversations, but think of a helix as you come back to the same idea, but at a more sophisticated viewpoint, right? Okay, so the Hosea now, so modified version of modified version 3. The Hosea is going to be the knowledge of how to sacrifice and pray. And so once again, what was care? Dealing with the gods. Turns out now that care is going to be unpacked in terms of sacrificing and praying. Okay, and what do we mean by sacrificing? Well, you're giving stuff to the gods, right? They would tell you take a drink of wine, you pour some out on the ground, a little bit for the gods, burnt offerings, sacrifices of various sorts, and these are little gifts that humans would give the gods in this kind of understanding of the relationship of the human and the divine. And then last but not least, of course, what's praying all about? Well, it's asking the gods for help. It's basically begging them, right? Again, I give the god a gift to please, and I pray from the god to, keep me safe, keep my family safe, and make sure the weather is good so my crops can come in and we don't starve in the winter. That kind of stuff. So, and so Socrates is this kind of some kind of like trading skill? Is this like negotiating with gods? And yeah, Euthyphro says, yeah, you can kind of call it that. It's working with the gods, sort of a transactional relationship with the gods. You give them stuff they like, and then maybe if you're lucky and they smile on you, they'll give you stuff that you need, and maybe they'll give you a treat or two here along the way. So we give them things like, what do we give? Socrates says it's, gods give us kind of good things like good weather, but what do the gods get out of the deal? And well, you honor them. You give them sacrifices and reverence, gratitude, and of course, when if you give someone something and hey, you didn't thank me, so this is a pleasing, even from a position of power, if something is given out by a god, you better thank them. They expect that, they want that, that is pleasing to them. We can't give them things like, we can't benefit a god the way a god can benefit us. That's a given. But we do have the ability to give them things that pleases them, and that's what's important. So in that sense, we're lucky as human beings because the gods want something from us, and we can give them something they like. And so once again, we're in the Hosean is that which is pleasing and dear to the gods, right? So we've come around to this, and it seems that Socrates now he brings the little thing up about Daedalus, and he adds a little twist. He said that once again these propositions, these things that we're uttering are moving, but Socrates has said, like, man, are they moving in circles now? Well, in a sense, you can say that, but so Socrates is clearly aware that they seem to have come back more or less to where they've started. But have we learned anything? Well, it seems that we've learned a little bit, but it's not exactly clear what that may be. But Socrates says, well, wait a second. Now we've got a logical impasse here, right? Is the Hosean because of what it is in and of itself? Which is what we said before, right? So originally was, before it was basically the Hosean was independent, right? So before, but now the Hosean is dependent on, shall we say, God love, right? So is independent of God love. All right. So there is your impasse, right? So Socrates says, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to stick to this as of what we said before, and then say, yeah, this is wrong. So we were right then, wrong now, or are we going to say, no, yeah, we're going to go back to this one, or the very early part. Yeah, this one, we're right now, and we were wrong then. So which one is it? You can't hold both positions. So that's your classic sort of impasse in this dialogue. Now, just as an aside, is this a false dichotomy? Could the Hosea be something else? Right? Does it have to be independent of God love? And therefore intrinsic? No, it's just kind of a little bit of wiggle room there. Yeah, maybe it's not dependent on. Maybe it's independent of God love. But maybe it's just us. Maybe the Hosean is something that we just say it is. Maybe we're kind of like, not gods, but like sort of mini gods. We recognize pious, or the Hosean, the piety, to be what it is, and that's it. So it's nothing independent, nor is it dependent on God. It's dependent on us. So there is a possibility of a third option. And you want to ask yourself, why doesn't Socrates even consider that, right? Why doesn't he say, well, could be. So here you have a dichotomy. But, ask yourself, is it a false one? Right? Now, Socrates is, and this is, a standard kind of early Socratic dialogue that ends in this impasse, right? We haven't got a definition. We've maybe learned, what have we learned? Well, it's extraordinarily difficult to get one of these definitions. So we're learning about trying to construct definitions and how difficult it is to get one to stand without, as to use the Daedalus thing, it's difficult to set a definition down without it getting up and running away on you and maybe running off and running in circles or whatnot. So that imagery of Daedalus the craftsman, and that's what our propositions do. They're products of Daedalus. They get up and they run around on us, is certainly an interesting metaphor, but we've seen it demonstrated here logically. So there's a nice convergence of the metaphor and the logic, two things that are not often thought of at once, namely. So Socrates says at around 15c13, as we're heading in, around 15c13, Socrates is like, okay, come on, I'm still in trouble. I'm here at the Archon Basileus's, right? And I'm in Miletus. Remember that whole context. I'm still in trouble here. And I'm looking to you, Euthyphro, to help me out. You claimed you had all this great knowledge of what the Hosean is and what the Anhosean is, and you're so comfortable. Remember, you're suing your dad and comparing yourself to Zeus. You still got to help me out. So let's go back and remember, Euthyphro's getting tired. He's had about enough, and Socrates says, tell me what the Hosean is. Don't run off now. Tell me what it is. I'm just like, we've got some things out of the way. What are we going to do now? Who knows? Maybe Socrates would look at this example. The third possibility. Maybe Socrates is on the verge of saying, this is a false dichotomy. Let's do something else. Come on, let's get back in the game, Euthyphro. And so he says, don't hide your knowledge of the Hosean, Euthyphro. Help me. And Euthyphro just says, oh, I gotta go. Now, does he really have to leave or whatever? Has he had enough? He wouldn't be the first person that's bailed on Socrates. And then again, remember, the society eventually kills him. So, and Socrates is like, what a thing to do, right? This is an outrage. You've cast me down from, and there's a lot of high-blown rhetoric. Is Socrates being facetious here? Is he making fun of, of Euthyphro, perhaps, but then again, keep in mind, Socrates doesn't really want to die, but also keep in mind that, now I haven't talked about this, but Socrates was a hoplite soldier, so drinking a glass of hemlock and then falling unconscious and dying probably didn't scare him all that much, and he was an older fellow. He doesn't seem to be really afraid of death. In one of the dialogues later on, the Phaedo, which forms sort of a piece with the Euthyphro, Socrates is like, I'm not afraid of dying or whatever, and besides, Socrates had been in war. He'd been at numerous battles, and he was in the Battle of Delium, so he was used to people trying to kill him. and kill him in a nasty way, like on an ancient Greek battlefield. But he nonetheless says, "You cast me down from a great hope that I would have knowledge of the Hossein and be able to live and survive and counter the attacks of the dreaded Miletus in the court. And now I've been cast down, and I won't have the knowledge of the Hossein that I would need to defend myself against the charge of being an Hossein." And this acquired knowledge not only would have been would not this knowledge of the Hosea would not only have freed me up, Socrates says, of being pushed around by my ignorance, right? It would have also made me a better person. So what I wouldn't have to invent things. If you told me what the Hosea really is, I wouldn't have to invent things about the Hosea. If you told me what the Hosea was, I would have gone off and lived a better life. And that's a big notion in Socratic thought, to have lived a better life. Not just lived a better life as being wealthy or whatever. It would have been probably part of having more of a good thing for me, but I would have been a better person. The world would have been better with this knowledge if you had have passed it along to me, and you're not. I would have been a better person for the rest of my life. Well, if Euthyphro had have stuck it out and helped Socrates out, I mean, you can think of this in hindsight now. Would Socrates have survived, and things would have been very different and whatnot? Who knows? But anyways, good, punchy, dramatic ending, and as many of the dialogues do end on this. Oh, this is terrible that we couldn't articulate this concept. So the dialogue really doesn't give us an answer directly to the Hossein, but it does get us thinking about the Hossein as an independent property or as a contingent property of God love, the role of its importance in human existence. And in this sense, it is it ends. Whoops, hang on, I can spell this correctly. Aporia. All right. So in this sense, we got a special kind of tangled up dialogue, which is called an aporia, which is like an impasse. And sometimes these early Socratic dialogues are called aporetic dialogues, that they end in a logical kind of an impasse, like something like this. But is it truly an impasse? Well, it seems to be. Have we learned anything? Well, you can think about that some more, but we've learned one thing, how difficult it is to define terms that we often use.